Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Code Escuela. And yeah, here with me in my potato camp again. And so it's been a while since I've posted my last episode, and this time around we are going to look at how I built another Blazor application that is based off of an Excel template. Okay, so another episode of Excel to Blazor. I don't know if you have gone through some of my other videos wherein I tried to build a Blazor application from Excel templates. And so in this one, we are going to go through how I did this one. And so hopefully this shouldn't take that long since I'm just going to discuss some highlights of what went through with this process. And so the template that I've selected is this one. It's a simple service invoice. Okay, so if you're wondering how I got this one, so if I create a new template here and I just chose from some of the existing templates that we have here, and so maybe you can check on this one, business category, and then first thing that uh, is shown here is this one. Okay, and then you'll just have to create this one, and then it will create a template, and after that, you'll be given this kind of template. So it's quite a very basic one wherein it lets you create a simple invoice literally from the title of this template. Okay, and so uh, before I proceeded with creating the application, I first have to thought of the data that we will be storing in our database. I mean, part of our application, okay, as database table, since we'll be using a regular uh, database engine. For this one, we will be using SQLite so that it's much easier to deal with, aside instead of just using your typical SQL Server or PostgreSQL or MySQL. So I often opted to just use SQLite for this one. And so here we have our template here, and then I have to decide what data or sections of this template we will be saving up or storing in our application. Okay, and so first thing that I have thought of to store is this section, wherein this I assume would be the provider of the service. Okay, and then we have another section here where we have this bill to, which I assume would be the customer that the invoice will be given to, and then some other relevant information for the invoice where you have your invoice number, invoice date, customer ID, and then the terms here, and then the section here wherein you have some sort of like a table. So this is where the details or the items of the invoice will be placed or stored. So it's just a simple table that you store or add items, okay, as part of your invoice. And some other sections here would be this one, some calculations as the subtotal. Then you can also set the tax rate, and then the uh, tax from that will be calculated off of the subtotal and then the tax rate. Okay, and so once I've identified the sections that we will be storing, so first up we have this provider or the company that provides the service. Then we have this customer. Sorry, we'll be storing the customer, and then for the invoice itself, we will be storing the invoice number, the date, customer ID, the terms, and then we will be also storing the invoice items. So how did I break this one down? So first off, I had to create several models that will become our base tables that will be needed to produce or compose our invoice later on. Okay, and so we will be needing to store the provider, the customer, and then the items, and of course the uh, invoice fields relating to the invoice itself. So what did I ended up with? So let's look at this project that I have open here. So this is our Blazor application already. And then first thing I did is to create the models itself. This would be considered our entities. So if we inspect here, we have several of them. We have the customer that would store the customer data. We have the provider, which stores the provider data, which would be this section. Okay. So it has several classes also in it. Okay. So you have the base provider, and then a provider does have several services uh, under its structure. Okay. So I opted to store the services here so that when you pull up or create an invoice, which we'll see later in our application, you can just choose the service specific to the provider. Okay, so that's why I've added a children of provider services under here. So it will be a property named services, would be a list or collection of provider service. Okay, I just ignore this one. It's just part of the relic while I was building this application. Okay, so the other model that we also used is the invoice. So the invoice itself. Now the invoice is composed of several properties, which includes this navigation property to the provider and then the customer, and then the items itself, the invoice item. Apart from the invoice, the parent invoice class, we also have this invoice item class, which would store the individual invoice items. Okay, so it has a link to the provider service. So we'll have to capture the quantity, the unit price, provider itself, and then the invoice ID. Okay, so now that we have that, since we will be using, or I have used entity framework for this one, I had to install the EF core packages that is necessary for us to store data behind a SQLite database using EF core. Okay, so first thing that you have to add is, of course, EF core. So if you look at the packages that I've installed here, first would be, we have the EF core. Okay, and then the specifically EF core.SQLite, since we will be using the SQLite database. Okay, and then apart from that, we've also included this EF core.tools, since this will be used to generate our migrations. Okay, so the migrations would be the code that EF core uses to create our tables and our database. So once we've done that, once I've created my initial models, I started to build up my migration. Okay, so although I have several one here, but yeah, you can quickly create your migration by running the add dash migration command. Okay, and then yeah, the name of your migration. So I have several migrations here that have been created through different stages of the creation of this application. But I think the first one would be this one, create providers table. Okay, since we will have to create our necessary tables for us to continue with the rest of the application. So again, this is what the uh, migration have created, and then you'll just run this by doing the update database command. Okay, and then the migration will uh, work on creating the necessary tables based on your migrations. So I have several stages here. I have the migration for provider table, the customers table, the provider services table, and then we also have the invoice itself. Okay, and so once I've done that, now we can uh, uh, as before moving on, for you to link up your EF core and your database and your models, you'll have to create a DB context off of that. So we'll be basing off this DB context, and we have this application DB context which will be our EF core. Majority of our EF core is hooked up, okay, against SQLite. So I've just decided to store the application DB, SQLite DB within our data folder. Okay. Now once that we have created our tables and database, so next thing would be to build the uh, pages that would manage or handle the management of our customers and providers. Okay. And later on the invoice. So let's just run this application so that you could see what is the result of having all of going through all of that. So yeah, so hopefully this runs now. This shouldn't take long. Okay, right. So we have this menu on the left side. Sorry, I forgot to mention that I've used the MudBlazor template for this project so that we don't have to set up uh, MudBlazor from scratch. So I decided to use the MudBlazor components. Okay, so that's why it has this look. With this one, with what's great with this one is you already have support for dark mode right out of the box. Okay, so here this would be the uh, entry points for your management of your providers and customers. So if you click that one, you'll have this display of a list of providers that you have on your database. So it has the basic functionalities that you would find on a regular CRUD application. So in this section, you can add providers, you can edit, click on edit. Under this page, you can add or edit provider details and including adding of services. Okay, so yeah, you can just add, let's say, uh, like this one, service, set the unit price. So I opted for this kind of design. Okay, and if you click the plus, then it will allow you to add that service. You can also remove services, right? You can also edit directly. And then if you click the save button, then that would save the changes that you've made. So pretty much like the same with this create button here where it allows you to create the provider. Okay. So going back, you can also remove or delete providers. Same thing or same pattern that goes through with the customers page. And so yeah, basically just the same set of functionalities, just specific only for customers. Okay, so following that kind of pattern, it's just very basic. All right, now that we have those things, these two things that we need to create our invoice, again, I've created the invoice model and then started uh, the migration to create our necessary tables and created the uh, invoice page. Okay, so the invoice page would be or would look like this. Let's go to navigate to invoice. So it's a list of all the invoices that you have. So you might notice that it missed some pagination controls. Maybe as an exercise you can add that here if you've off or if you want to try. Okay, so there's only two basic functions for this one. You can click on the plus button to create an invoice, all right, or you can click on the provider name here for one of the rows. That would send you to the details of the invoice in edit mode. Okay, you can directly change stuff here. Okay, now with this one, uh, the tricky part of this invoice is that the section for adding the invoice items. So my first option was to have this list, I mean to have this table and then have the adding of service control at the bottom row. Okay, so What do I mean by that? Let's just jump to that uh, commit where I opted to go for that kind of approach. Okay, let me just double check here if that's fine. Okay. Okay, so let's check this one out. Let's check this out. Uncommitted changes. Let's just stash that. Okay, let's try again. Check out. Okay, cool. Okay, let's go back to my first approach that I did for the invoice. So let's run. Hopefully nothing breaks. All right, so we're in dark mode. Let's switch to light mode. Okay, now with this one, since I was just working on this one, I opted to just directly set the invoice link to invoices create. Yeah, to make the testing easier. But anyway, so this is what I did. So if you choose a provider, then you have the option to select this item directly on the table itself. Okay, so if you look at the code for this one, so this is how I did it. So actually it isn't really a table. It was just designed to look like a table because you know, you can't just nest forms within uh, the rows of the table structure. So yeah, I tried to use a grid that would look like a table. So I ended up with this kind of layout. So what's great about this one is that if you select one, then it would add that row on top of the set of this bottom row. Okay, now the problem with this one is that if you use your keyboard, use the arrow up and down keys, it would end up with like this. So I don't know. Yeah. So it took me some time to realize that yeah, this just doesn't work. I tried different tricks to make this work so that if you choose one and then press enter, that would only be the time that it would accept that input and then add it on our row above it. But somehow I just couldn't find a way to make it work correctly. Okay, and so with that, I'd ended up with a much more simpler approach. That would have been great though if yeah, if that would have worked fine. I mean, worked correctly. So let's jump back to our latest. Yes. Okay. And then let's run this back so that we would see the final approach that I did for that uh, page. Okay, so go back to invoices and then let's add one. Okay, now with this approach, I opted to just uh, add the add service, I mean add item function on the top of the table. Okay, if you select one and then click the plus button, that would be the time that you can change, I mean add the item on the table. Okay, but with this one you can all change it if it's already on the row. Okay, you can change uh, whatever is in the, I mean whatever item you want to change. Okay, it doesn't affect the rest of the table. Okay, now this one seems to work fine for me. Okay, and so I think this was the quite the the part where I took quite some time to build up on. Okay, and so going back, what else did I, yeah, so once I had the three important parts done, we'd have the managing of customers, providers, and the actual creation of the invoice itself. And so uh, the next thing to do would be to the generation of your invoice itself. I mean the print part of the invoice. Since how do you produce invoices? You do that by creating a printed version of this, but in this case I opted to generate a PDF file, so an invoice in PDF format. Okay, so let's go back here. Let's choose one of this one, and then if we click on this one, there's two buttons now. The first one I mean the this one would be save, and then this one would be print. This one would, if you click on that one, it will generate the PDF invoice, and then if you click on that one, you'll see that it is, I tried to make it as close as possible as to the template that we have here, so that, yeah, that's the best that I could do. Okay, so with this one I've used QuestPdf as our main library. So if you missed uh, an episode that I had, so you can check out my one of my episodes wherein I used, or I've demoed how to use QuestPdf. Okay, it's quite easy really. So before I've integrated or added this function in our Blazor application with this one, I had to do some prototyping. So how did I do that? First, I created a simple, I mean, a basic console application, and then added the necessary code to prototype or create the layout of my invoice. Okay, so what greatly helped me with this one is uh, with the help of the QuestPdf companion tool. So what does I mean by that? So QuestPdf has this very helpful tool that is also free for download. Okay, wherein you can, let's go back here. I think it's prototyping. Here, the companion tool. So when working with QuestPdf, this is a very useful tool coming off from QuestPdf itself, wherein you can download and install this one on your machine, and then you can start prototyping without trying to figure out how the layout would look like, without actually like generating and checking it, opening the file itself. So let me show you how I did that. Okay, so let's just set this one and let's run this one up. Before I forget, for this to work, stop this first. We'll have to open the QuestPdf companion application. Okay, now that that's running, if we run this console application that has my code for the invoice, you will see that you will have a preview of your QuestPdf code. Okay, so this is kind of neat because you can just quickly prototype your stuff here. Okay, and it's great because it's has support for what they call hot reload. So in case you don't need to restart your application, you just change your code and then it will reflect immediately. Okay, so let's see here, let's change some stuff here. Okay, so where does the build to, okay, so you see, if let me try to change the build to here text here. So for example, if you, while you were doing or checking, or I mean editing your code or building up your PDF, if you click save, I mean hit save, you will immediately see that, yeah, it reflected the changes that you have on your code. So it's very neat because you can see that uh, you can easily prototype your PDF file or report. Okay, so with this one, since the approach that I did with this one is through the use of rows and columns, so uh, QuestPdf provides several layouting mechanisms. Okay, one of which is the use of rows and columns. So this would be how the column would look like if you use the column layout, and then you also have this row. Okay, the row would look like this one. Okay, you have this vertical rows, and then the columns would be like this one, a stack of columns. And so with this approach, the combination of rows and columns is what I did here to lay out this report. Okay, what's great also about the QuestPdf companion app is that you can actually inspect your PDF file. Okay, you see here you have this option of the hierarchy. You can actually see how the sections of your layout is. Okay, so what I did with this one is as a overall layout, I've used a column that would stack the sections. So again, splitting the sections into columns. The first column would be this top part where you have your invoice title of the report, and then the provider, the details of the provider. The next section would be this part, the customer's details or data, and then the invoice data. And then lastly, the last column would be this section of the table when you have the table for the items. Okay, in that way it's much easier to lay out your report. So go by column and then rows, columns, rows, and columns. Okay, like in a grid pattern of some sort. Okay, now that's very neat because it allows you to easily uh, format your report. Cool. And so with that, after I've done that, all I need to do next is to just take this entire code here and add it into our Blazor application. So I've decided to put it in a separate class. This is named report service, and then here a method that would generate invoice. Okay, so with that, you just call it within your Blazor application. So a very short code. So here is the actual code for when you click the print button. Okay, so you instantiate your report service, you generate your invoice. So with this one, since the generated invoice is in a PDF form that will be stored inside the application, all you just need to have is return the path to that uh, PDF file. Okay, and then for that to get downloaded on the client side, you'll have to do some extra steps. First one would be uh, to send data back to the client side in a form of a download. Then you will need to have to set up this download stream JavaScript call. So first you'll have to add, let's go to our app.razor and then add this code. This code is already known on Blazor and how you can download files from your Blazor application. So you just put this here, and then from there you can call it inside your method. You also need to inject the JS runtime because you are calling JavaScript code. Okay, passing in the path, and from there it will get downloaded to the client side. Okay, just like what you saw a while ago. Let's run this again, wherein the PDF file has been downloaded to the client side or on the browser. So let's say this one. Okay, this one, if you click on print, it will download, and you can see that, yeah, the contents of this are dynamic, coming off from the details or data from the invoice itself. The provider, the customer, some invoice details here, and the invoice items. So you might have also noticed that I have missed some of the parts here. Like one one very noticeable example is the I missed the application of the tax rate. Okay, maybe as an exercise you can add that here in your application. So I think what you already, I mean, what you just need to do is to add a tax rate field or property in your model, create a new migration that would create that column for that table, run the migration, then it will update your database, and then somewhere in your invoice here you can set the tax rate and then do some calculations alongside it. Okay, so yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have discussed for what I did with this application. So yeah, my commits are kind of messy since yeah, it took me quite some time to finish this one. It's yeah, since my last episode, and so I'm hoping to do more of this later in the future. And yeah, after this one, I'll move into another different template. If yeah, if you have some comments or some things that you want to tell me, maybe I've missed something, or maybe I have done something that might not be correct, or yeah, whatever you have in mind, please feel free to tell me. And yeah, or any suggestions, things that we could improve on this application. And so yeah, I think that wraps it up for this one. And uh please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And yeah, I'm hoping to see you again in our next episode. And yeah, see you again everyone, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.